Today, we're going to find out how many people with a Scandinavian background live in Minneapolis, and I'm going to show you how to do that, and you can do it yourself. We're going to create this tabulation, and at first it may look like, well, you have to have a lot of background to do that, but you really don't, and I'll show you why. First I'll explain what these things mean. ANCP1 means their primary ancestry, 2 is their secondary ancestry, LANP is the language spoken at home, POBP is the place of birth. But you don't need to know any of that to create this tabulation. PWGTP is how many people there are, and by the way, this only covers Minneapolis because we are looking for Scandinavians that live in Minneapolis. PLWGTP is how many households they live in, and that gets to be a little interesting. For example, we see that we have 20,000 people with a Norwegian ancestry as their primary ancestry and no other Scandinavian characteristics, and they live in 14,000 different households. So typically they do not live with another Norwegian, it looks like, unless it's one that has some other Scandinavian characteristics. Low val and high val, this is taken from a sample that the Census Bureau takes. It's a 1% sample. So this 20,000 isn't an exact number. There's a 90% chance that it will fit between the numbers 16,558 and 23,922. Where you see the negatives, that just means the margin of error was subtracted from the original number, the 278. Well, the margin of error was larger than 278, so we ended up with a negative, and you can just think 0 when you see that. I'm going to show you how to do this without having any background. But what you do is you run this tabulation, then just do a little spreadsheet work. I added up the total Scandinavians in Minneapolis. There's about 63,500. I added up the total number of people in Minneapolis. There's about 415,000, and did a percentage calculation to find we have 15% people in Minneapolis are Scandinavians. Now, here's how we did it. There's an app out on the Google Play Store that I wrote, and I just put it up there. So go out to the Google Play Store and search for Gateway To MAST. It's in beta test mode, and so when you search for Gateway To MAST, you get all these things that are not Gateway To MAST, and so you have to scroll down a bit. And there it is, Gateway To MAST, John Grumbine, early access, because it's not what they call a real release, it's beta test. So we click on that and say install. Even though it's unreleased, you're allowed to do that. Install. It's installed. Let's open it up and hit the Start New button. That means we're going to start a new tabulation. Of course, you've never made one before, so you have to start a new one. When you do that, it's going to hang for a moment while it builds its database. It's done. If you have a slower machine than this one I have in my hand, it will take a little longer. Okay, now it's opened up this window of menus here. And these are the things we're going to use to build that tabulation. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into what I call easy mode, and this is what makes life easy on us. We want to find Scandinavians in Minneapolis. So we're going to start off by searching for SCAND, S-C-A-N-D, and I could either hit the Done button or the Search button, and it finds two different places where Scandinavian occurs in the US Census Data and the American Community Survey. Either is the primary ancestry for a person, or is their secondary ancestry. I want both of those, so I'm going to hit toggle, which will select everything in my list. So I've got those two, but I also realize that a lot of people who live in Scandinavia or who have a Scandinavian background may not say that their ancestry is Scandinavian. They might say something else. So I'm going to look for people who have some kind of a Norwegian background. And so I'm going to search for NORW, and that will pick up a few different things. It picks up the Norwegian language, place of birth Norway, primary ancestry Norwegian, secondary ancestry Norwegian. I want all of those. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle those. And I also want people who have a Danish background. So I'm going to go look for Denmark. and search. And I can either hit search or done. And found place of birth Denmark. Okay, I could click that, or I could hit the toggle button. And I want to find anything about Danish. Anytime that shows up in the census. So search for Danish. And I see the language spoken at home can be Danish, or the primary or secondary ancestry can be Danish. I want all three of them. Toggle. And I also want anyone who had anything to do with Sweden, if they were born in Sweden, if they speak Swedish, if they have an ancestry of Swedish. So I'm going to look for SWED, search. And I've got language spoken at home, Swedish, place of birth, Sweden, primary, secondary ancestry of Swedish, toggle. I want all of them. I think I've got all the people I want. Let's take a look at what the tabulation looks like at this point, or what my query looks like, really. I won't see the tabulation for a little bit yet. So review and submit the query. I'm not actually going to submit it. There's a warning here that tells me any household volumes will not show up because I didn't pick household dimensions. That's fine. I don't want household dimensions for this tabulation. This tells me my person volumes that were selected were PLWGTP, which is kind of a difficult way of saying person level household counts, like we looked at in the big tabulation on the big screen. And the other one is PWGTP, which is person counts. So I'm going to count people, and I'm going to count the households they live in. For person dimensions, I'm going to look for, in primary ancestry, people who are Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, and Scandinavian. And my easy mode found that for me. Oh, incidentally, these two, you never saw me pick those. Well, when I hit Start New at the beginning, it figured I wanted those. And so it picked them because I always want those. Secondary ancestry, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, Scandinavian. Language spoken at home can be Swedish, Danish, or Norwegian, and place of birth can be Denmark, Norway, or Sweden. We're almost done, but there is one more thing we want. We haven't told it to only look in Minneapolis. So let's do that now. And we can't do that in easy mode. We need to go choose geographies. And so I'm going to pick a geography here. Now, if you know census data, you can use region, division, states, and PUMS. If you're not familiar with census data, or even if you are, for me, this is the easiest way to go. Type in the place you want. And you don't even have to type in all of it. I'll just type in mini and do a either done or search. And it brings up a number of things where the string mini is found. Central Minnesota, I don't want that. Minnetonka, no. Wait a minute. Minneapolis North. I do want Minneapolis North, so I'm going to click that. Minneapolis City Southeast, I want that. And Minneapolis City Southwest, I want that. And these other things are not part of Minneapolis. So Minneapolis is broken up into 3 areas called PUMAs, Public Use Microdata Areas. It's good to check a PUMA map to make sure you like the boundaries, but we're going to go ahead and pick these 3. And that's it for choosing our tabulation. Now we need to go back to review and submit. And we can see we've got our 3 PUMAs here that we picked in Minneapolis City. And the same volumes and dimensions we looked at earlier. Now I need to give it a name. And that name will be used when the tabulation is delivered to me. I'll just call it tab. I need a place to deliver it. And so you've got to enter your email here. I'll put mine in. On the internet at gmail.com. Okay. And then just hit send. Oh, I've got to agree to terms and conditions. Well, you should read these. I know what they say, so I'm just going to agree and then go back and review and submit again. It will keep my email address. You don't have to retype that every time, but it figures you want a different name for your tabulation every time, or things are going to get confused. So always give it a different name than one you've already submitted. I never did submit tab, so go ahead and send. Give me a few moments to send your query. Your query has been sent. A few moments later, I have an email from one guy on the internet at gmail.com. It says your census tabulation. Click on that and tab.csv, which is what I asked for. Open it up. And we can see there's my things that I asked for. Primary ancestry, Danish, Norwegian, Scandinavian. Now, anything I did not ask for gets thrown into a category called Other. And that's very important because if I only got people who were Danish, Norwegian, etc., I'd miss out on a lot of people that I want. For example, these people right here, there's 10,000 of them. Well, they had a Norwegian for ANC2P, but if I left out the others, they'd have been excluded because of this, they'd have been excluded because of that, and because of that. But there's your tabulation. You'll get it, if all goes well, a few minutes after you send it.